and below it by the first four aortic intercostals, the pericardiacophrenics, and the superior and inferior epigastrics. Peculiarities. The height to which the aorta rises in the thorax is usually about 2.5 centimeters below the upper border of the sternum, but it may ascend nearly to the top of the bone. Occasionally it's found 4 centimeters, more rarely from 5 to 8 centimeters below this point. Occasionally it is found 4 centimeters, more rarely from 5 to 8 centimeters below this point. Sometimes the aorta arches over the root of the right lung, right aortic arch, instead of over that of the left, and passes down on the right side of the vertebral column, a condition which is found in birds. In such cases, all the thoracic and abdominal viscera are transposed. Less frequently the aorta, after arching over the root of the right lung, is directed to its usual position on the left side of the vertebral column. This peculiarity is not accompanied by transposition of the viscera. The aorta occasionally divides, as in some quadrupeds, into an ascending and a descending trunk, the former of which is directed vertically upward and subdivides into 3 branches to supply the head and upper extremities. Sometimes the aorta subdivides near its origin into 2 branches which soon reunite. In one of these cases, the esophagus and trachea were found to pass through the interval between the 2 branches. This is the normal condition of the vessel in the reptilia. Branches. The branches given off from the arch of the aorta are 3 in number: the innominate, the left common carotid, and the left subclavian. Peculiarities. Position of the branches. The branches, instead of arising from the highest part of the arch, may spring from the commencement of the arch or upper part of the ascending aorta, or the distance between them at their origins may be increased or diminished, the most frequent change in this respect being the approximation of the left carotid toward the innominate artery. The number of the primary branches may be reduced to 1, or more commonly 2, the left carotid arising from the innominate artery, or, more rarely, the carotid and subclavian arteries of the left side arising from a left innominate artery. But the number may be increased to 4 from the right carotid and subclavian arteries arising directly from the aorta, the innominate being absent. In most of these latter cases, the right subclavian has been found to arise from the left end of the arch. In other cases, it is the second or third branch given off instead of the first. Another common form in which there are 4 primary branches is that in which the left vertebral artery arises from the arch of the aorta between the left carotid and subclavian arteries. Lastly, the number of trunks from the arch may be increased to 5 or 6. In these instances, the external and internal carotids arise separately from the arch, the common carotid being absent on one or both sides. In some cases, 6 branches have been found, and this condition is associated with the origin of both vertebral arteries from the arch. Number usual, arrangement different. When the aorta arches over to the right side, the 3 branches have an arrangement the reverse of what is usual. The innominate artery is the left one, and the right carotid and subclavian arise separately. In other cases, where the aorta takes its usual course, the 2 carotids may be joined in a common trunk, and the subclavians arise separately from the arch, the right subclavian generally arising from the left end of the arch. In some instances, other arteries spring from the arch of the aorta. Of these, the most common are the bronchial, one or both, and the thyroidea ema, but the internal mammary and the inferior thyroid have been seen to arise from this vessel. The innominate artery, A. Anonyma brachiocephalic artery. The innominate artery is the largest branch of the arch of the aorta and is from 4 to 5 centimeters in length. It arises on a level with the upper border of the second right costal cartilage, from the commencement of the arch of the aorta on a plane anterior to the origin of the left carotid. It ascends obliquely upward, backward, and to the right to the level of the upper border of the right sternoclavicular articulation, where it divides into the right common carotid and right subclavian arteries. Relations. Anteriorly, it is separated from the manubrium sterni by the sternohyoides and sternothyroideus, the remains of the thymus, the left innominate and right inferior thyroid veins which cross its root, and sometimes the superior cardiac branches of the right vagus. Posterior to it is the trachea, which it crosses obliquely. On the right side are the right innominate vein, the superior vena cava, the right phrenic nerve, and the pleura, and on the left side the remains of the thymus, the origin of the left common carotid artery, the inferior thyroid veins, and the trachea. Branches. The innominate artery usually gives off no branches, but occasionally a small branch, the thyroidea ima, arises from it. Sometimes it gives off a thymic or bronchial branch. The thyroidea ima, ascends in front of the trachea to the lower part of the thyroid gland which it supplies. It varies greatly in size and appears to compensate for deficiency or absence of one of the other thyroid vessels. It occasionally arises from the aorta, the right common carotid, the subclavian, or the internal mammary. Point of division. The innominate artery sometimes divides the level of the sternoclavicular joint, less frequently below it. Position. When the aortic arch is on the right side, the innominate is directed to the left side of the neck. Collateral circulation. Alan Burns demonstrated on the dead subject the possibility of the establishment of the collateral circulation after ligature of the innominate artery by tying and dividing that artery. He then found that even course injection impelled into the aorta passed freely by the anastomosing branches into the arteries of the right arm, filling them and all the vessels of the head completely. The branches by which this circulation would be carried on are very numerous. Thus, all the communications across the middle line between the branches of the carotid arteries of the opposite sides would be available for the supply of blood to the right side of the head and neck, while the anastomosis between the costo-cervical of the subclavian and the first aortic intercostal, see infra on the collateral circulation after obliteration of the thoracic aorta, would bring the blood by a free and direct course into the right subclavian. The numerous connections also between the intercostal arteries and the branches of the axillary and internal mammary arteries would doubtless assist in the supply of blood to the right arm, while the inferior epigastric from the external iliac would, by means of its anastomosis with the internal mammary, compensate for any deficiency in the vascularity of the wall of the chest. End of section 10, part 3, recorded by Suzanne Olson.